Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special episode of Silver Age Silver Screen, where our fearless hosts are attempting to go 5 15-minute rounds against the Rocky franchise as they review all 5 of the classic Rocky films. Not Rocky Balboa or either Creed film, because time limits. I am your host, Casey Jarms.
And I'm your other host, Riley Thorpe, fool! I'm gonna beat your ass, Casey, fool! That was my really bad Mr. T impression. Continue.
So we're reviewing all of the Rocky movies in 1 hour-long podcast.
Just a little backstory as to why we decided to change up the formula. Typically, the structure we have for the show, as you longtime viewers would know, is we only review one movie per episode. The idea for reviewing an entire series was my idea because if you've read the bio, I am a huge horror fan. I've written, directed horror movies, or horror short films, rather, and I am a huge fan of horror movies. I've been interested in the possibility of us reviewing some classic horror movies on the show, because I think, with me being a huge horror fan, and Casey not as much being a horror fan, not because he doesn't like it, but just he's not scared by horror movies from the conversations you and I have had together. So I think it would be really interesting to analyze some horror movies, and in addition to that, classic horror movies, from the perspective of someone who's a big fan and someone who's not as much. Yeah. I think that'd be a great discussion, and I think we could get a lot out of that. Films like Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Exorcist, Amityville, and I would really be interested in talking about those. Then I had the thought of, I would also like to talk about some of their sequels, because again, I think that would be a very interesting look to see how these iconic genre film franchises changed, evolved, and arguably died over time. Most of them. The problem is, the thing that Hollywood does with these types of franchises is they beat them to death and then kept beating for about 20 more years.
Yeah, and their stupid manager, Rocky, doesn't throw in the towel because the franchise, for some reason, is begging to die.
Or Paulie just kind of signs it away, and it's never to be brought up again.
So yeah, this idea, it came from wanting to do horror films but not dedicate half the show to doing horror films. And my suggestion was, why don't we start with Rocky as a sort of 4th of July special? There are 5 films. They're all very similar. Like, watching 5 Rocky movies back to back, these are similar movies in style and structure and quality. I mean, there's a bit of variance, but it's very repetitive to watch 5 Rocky movies at once.
Yeah, Casey suggested Rocky be our kind of trial run with this idea, because I would love to talk about, spend an entire episode, devote to an entire horror franchise, or just a franchise in general. And I feel comfortable saying that about horror because a lot of those movies just tend to be cheap exploitation thrillers. But the problem is that by the end of next year, there will be a total of 13 Halloween films, 12 Friday the 13th films.
Well, we gotta wait until there's one more before we do that.
True. But there's also 9 Nightmare on Elm Streets, 23 Amityville movies. There are 5 Exorcist movies. At that point, right there, you're almost at an entire year's worth of episodes. I wouldn't want to put Casey through that. I wouldn't want to put the show through that. At that point, we just kind of be wasting our time. And trust me, as much as I would love to review Halloween Resurrection, where rapper Busta Rhymes defeats Michael Myers by karate kicking him out of a window.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that's how far that franchise fell. As much as I would love to review those movies individually, at a point, it's not even going to be worth it. So my suggestion was, let's review the entire franchise in one episode. The problem with that, I brought this up to you, Casey, in February? And it's now, at least as of recording this, it's June. The problem is that we're both students and employees, and we have internships, and we're just working on our own stuff. It's just hard to fit it in. That's why we had to wait until the summer to have enough time, and that's what we're gonna try to see. If this style works for an episode, then we might possibly do that in the future. I will just say right now, if we don't appreciate, or we just don't get anything out of this, we don't feel like we can have a good discussion, or it was too stressful just to watch fucking 10 movies in one go, then I'm totally fine not reviewing the straight to DVD Hellraiser movies. You
And
know?
this is a conversation for another day. Honestly, we spent too much time talking about that. Oh god, this is going to be an episode where we're going to have to go fast. Like I said, we're planning to do 15 minutes per movie. And I'm saying a timer. And when that timer ends, we are giving the scores. Because
Yes.
I got shit to do tonight. I cannot be here for 4 hours talking about Rocky. Also, I would have to edit that.
Yeah.
The main thing we're going to end up cutting out is recapping plot, which takes up about half of all of our episodes. Honestly, the plots in Rocky movies are simple. Go look them up. And we might not have time to get into all the dumb trivia, like the fact that Sylvester Stallone wrote the rough draft to the original Rocky in one night, or the fact that Dolph Lundgren broke Sylvester Stallone's ribs while they were filming Rocky 4. We're just going to give some quick, concise explanations about why these movies are kind of just okay.
Yep, so let's get right into it.
Starting the timer now. 15 minutes, Riley, and it will end up being shorter because we're going to have to edit this down. What do you think about Rocky?
It really surprised me because typically when you think of sports movies, you think of certain tropes and cliches that occur, you know? And I went into this movie, to be honest, I haven't seen any of these movies. I know I'm a terrible film student.
Oh, wow, I'd seen all of them before.
I saw Creed, but this is the first time I'm watching the other ones. Creed was great. But it's very interesting to see, like, what is considered to be the king of all sports movies to be really separated from the standard tropes and cliches of a sports movie. It's a character piece. It really breaks down the stigma of boxers and fighters as, like, typical meathead assholes that you would assume they are. But this movie, the focus of this movie is to show you the character of Rocky. Who is he? What does he value? What's he all about? There's so many scenes in this movie. It really surprises you because he's a boxer. He works for a loan shark, breaking people's fingers and shit if they don't pay him back. But throughout the movie, there's scenes where he refuses to break a guy's thumbs. That's one
He
of
likes
them.
animals.
Yeah, he loves animals. He goes out of his way to help a teenage girl so she doesn't get caught up in the wrong crowd. And it really makes you think, like, wow, on the surface level, you would assume all this stuff about this guy, but it really does show you a different side of him, of what people like this would be like. He has a heart of gold, and he just wants what's best for everybody. He falls in love with a woman who no one looks twice at. He just sees this really shy woman working at a pet shop, and he is infatuated with her because he sees and recognizes the beauty and the value within her. And it's like, damn, this is like actually really interesting from a character perspective, you know? It really fleshes out Rocky incredibly well.
The series as a whole's greatest strength is that Rocky Balboa is a really good character. He's rough around the edges. He's a meat guy. He don't talk too good. He is very dumb. But deep down, he's got a really good heart. He just never gives up. Like, all of his fights end up coming down to, I kept punching him and he wouldn't stop fighting. What is wrong with him?
One thing that was present in this film that I give him credit is present in all the films is that he is always, regardless of the situation, is always the underdog. And because of that, you're rooting for him. You know, he's just this small-time boxer. Nobody takes him seriously. Even the people he trains with are, like, kicking him out of the gym, replacing his locker, making fun of him. It really makes you feel for him and what he's going through. He's always the underdog, which I really appreciate.
He's so awkward. He's, like, such a dork, and it's really likable. Like, Sylvester Stallone, as an actor, he has a very specific style. I don't know if it's good or bad, but Rocky is the best Sylvester Stallone character because it was written by Sylvester Stallone for Sylvester Stallone, and just leans into his natural tendencies to make this realistic, relatable, kind of dorky guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why Sylvester Stallone went to such great lengths to ensure that he would be the guy portraying Rocky. Like, he took this to so many different studios, and they all just told him, yeah, we'll do it, but we want this big name actor. We want this. We want that. We want to take it in this direction. And he's like, no, I want to do it myself. This is me. This is who I am. I can play this character. And he produced it independently.
And of course, if you have this ultimate underdog, you need to pair him up against something that is over the top, cartoonish evil. This undefeated heavyweight champion who acts like a clown and gives music video performances while dressed like George Washington before his fight. Can we talk about Apollo Creed?
Yes.
I love Apollo Creed. He's the best Rocky antagonist. He's just so smug and over the top, yet somehow still likable.
I think, apart from Rocky, I'm going to be honest, I think throughout this entire franchise, Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed is my favorite character in this entire franchise.
I would dare say he might even be better.
Yeah, he is fantastic. He really serves this purpose of just being this larger-than-life guy. He's a champion, he's very arrogant and full of himself, and that does come into play later on in a very interesting and unexpected way for me personally. He is great. He is this guy who has everything in the world. He's fit, he's good looking, he's got a family, a wife that loves him.
He's super fucking rich.
He's famous.
On top of the world heavyweight champion.
Yeah, and the only disappointment with his character in the first movie is that he's not in it that much. He's just kind of in a couple scenes. And he establishes, obviously, that he wants to take on a local Philadelphia fighter as just kind of like a showcase of how great he is. And they pick Sylvester Stallone, or rather Rocky. Yeah, he was great in it.
To contrast just this over-the-topness, we get Adrian, Rocky's love interest, who, like, I remembered that she was shy, but holy shit, she is so shy and awkward in this one. Like, to the point where I wonder if the character is autistic. And, like, comparing her performance in Rocky 1 to Rocky 3 onward, it's like completely different character.
Yeah.
She's just so quiet and awkward and a bit cute.
I did think she did a good job playing that. It's just, it is really interesting to look at it, just how awkward she is. And it's strange that she would go out with someone like Rocky, but then you remember, oh shit, Polly. Let's talk about Polly for a second.
Well, in my notes, I have this cut into sections. Let's see. Underdog likes animals. Fuck Polly. Proposal cute. Does Adrian hate him? Fuck Polly. Thunderclip's ridiculous. Club Lang fantastic. Fuck Polly. Fuck Polly. Fuck Polly. I don't like Polly. He's just an asshole.
Yeah.
He's just an abusive asshole to Adrian, and he continues to be through the series. And I don't think he's funny, and they never, until the climax of the fourth one, they never give him, like, a jerk with the heart of gold actually is kind of nice deep down bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a dick who ruins everything, and he's just unlikable. I hate Paulie.
Yeah, he is a very unlikable guy. He, like, pressures Adrian into going out with Rocky for the first time because he, like, starts berating her, and she's been working all day on this Thanksgiving turkey, and he throws it out into the alley. I like the dynamic of having a character who's just so unlikable in a movie like this, but I don't know, he just is consistently a problem.
And the problem is, he never gets his comeuppance. Like, Rocky never says, you know what, fuck you, punches him in the face. And he never, except for, like, a scene in the fourth and a scene in the fifth, has, like, some depth where, oh, he's a nice guy deep down. He's just an asshole who Rocky keeps around. And I don't think he's very funny.
No, I didn't even think it was done for comedy. I just think it's like, yeah, this is the kind of people that professional athletes would keep around them. You know, like, you always hear stories of, like, athletes hanging around the wrong crowd, but at the same time, it's like he never learns from that. He just kind of always keeps them around. I don't know. I heard that Rocky and Paulie had some good scenes in Rocky Balboa, but we aren't talking about that right now.
Yeah, that's the only one I haven't seen, so maybe it's good. Who knows? While we're on the topic of saying some faults of this movie, honestly, I think this movie takes a long time to get its gears going, and that's a problem that no other Rocky movie has. It's a lot of just showing Rocky as a debt collector and him falling in love with Adrian. And I mean, that's fine, but also because Rocky is a quiet, awkward guy, it can become boring at times. It takes until like halfway through the movie for the core concept, this underdog fight he has to train for, to get brought up. And I think that's to the film's detriment.
Yeah, I agree. For me personally, it wasn't too much of a detriment for me because, like I said, this movie is first and foremost a character piece, and it's showcasing what this guy is, like the mundaneness of life, or rather, mundaneness. He's a fucking strongman for a loan shark.
And yet, it's mundane.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, it takes a while for the plot of him training to win this boxing match against Creed to start kicking in, but it worked in the sense of showcasing Rocky's character, but at the same time, there are quicker ways of doing that.
And like the problem is, the most interesting parts of his character, I feel, are the I don't care about winning. I just want to go the distance, and there's never going to be a rematch. I don't want one. Just him fighting for the sake of fighting because that's what he is, a fighter, and that continues through the series.
On that note, this movie won Best Picture, Best Directing, Best Editing. It won Best Picture against the likes of films such as Network, Bound for Glory, All the President's Men, and Taxi Driver. Personally, I did really love this movie, but Taxi Driver is a masterpiece.
Yeah, it inspired a guy to shoot Ronald Reagan, which 10 out of 10 in my book.
I don't know. I don't think this is above Taxi Driver in terms of story, script, plot, really anything. Honestly, as much as I do love this movie, I think Taxi Driver was robbed in that sense. But I do think for what this movie is, I do definitely think it should have been nominated, and it was.
Yeah.
That said, there were a few directing and camera and cinematography moments that I was like, really? That was the best one you got? Like, there was a lot of out of focus shots in this movie, which I guess fits into the independent film style of it. But at the end of the day, I'm just like, can't you pull in the focus a little bit?
And by the way, not to cut you off, we got 20 seconds left, so I'm just going to get some very quick points. The music in this movie is great. I think Gonna Fly Now is the best song in the series. The training, it's classic, just the running up the steps, it's nice. Rocky was kind of raping that one scene. Don't drink raw eggs, you'll get salmonella. And also, I felt like how the final battle ends and there's the timer, so I can't say that I think how that fight ended was kind of anticlimactic because it's ended by the bell as opposed to a knockout like all the other fights in the series. They're just like punching on each other and then, oh, it's over now.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also like the fact that it does end in a mundane way because this movie is going for the mundane. Honestly, I was like, wait, did they just announce that Creed won? Is that it? Oh, okay. Yeah, they did.
And the Adrian shouting is cheesy. Riley, it's been 15 minutes. The bell has rang. Any last minute comment?
That scene where Rocky's eye is swollen shut, so they have to cut his eyelid open, that was gritty. That was intense. Not gonna lie. Overall, Rocky, great character piece. Really slow, really mundane. Didn't deserve to win Best Picture in my opinion, but still a great movie that established an iconic actor, an iconic character, and set the standard for an entire genre of films.
What you gonna give it?
I'm gonna give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a really great movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it the same. It's funny, the Rocky series, it's one of those famous film franchises where everyone's like, oh, the first one's a masterpiece, and then each subsequent one is worse and worse and worse. I don't really agree with that.
Yeah, no, neither do I.
I think Rocky, the original, is just kind of in the middle.
You think so?
Well, we'll get into that as we go on to Rocky 2. So, by the way, as we go into Rocky 2, this film begins with the ending of the last one, and every Rocky movie does that.
Yeah.
It's so dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good, because audiences aren't expected to watch 5 films in 1 week, but still.
Honestly, after 3, I was like, just skip this scene. All the movies in this franchise were made with the full intention on being the final installment in the series. They were never like, we're going to make a sequel. We're lucky we get to make a sequel at all. That's how all of these movies were made, which is interesting for me personally because I shotgunned all 5 of these movies in one day. It's really interesting to see because these all feel like episodes of a TV series. They all work in tandem with each other, and there's a lot of structural similarities between the story. Like, they all end in a boxing match. Rocky's the underdog. Stuff with his relationship with Adrian and Polly and stuff like that. But beyond that, what I really appreciated about 2 is that beyond that, this is its own wholly original story. Whereas the first one was showcasing who Rocky is as a character, this one's about what does fighting mean to him as a person. Like, because the plot of this movie is after the fight with Creed, which he lost, he is trying to move on from fighting.
Yeah, because he's about to go blind in his left eye and won't be able to fight ever again if he has this rematch with Creed. And they forget about that from Rocky 3 onward, which is weird.
There's a lot some of the sequels forget. A lot of this movie, in the way that the first one was predominantly about showing who Rocky is, the second one is showing him trying to move on and failing at that. And that's really heartbreaking, having watched the first one and knowing and loving this character, just seeing him constantly fail and fail. I mean, he comes into some money because of his fight with Creed, and he just kind of starts spending all of it on cars, watches, houses, stuff like that. And it's all very fitting to the character. And it was really great to see how this character would continue, especially in this way. I think that part was definitely very well done.
The first 2 Rocky movies are the most similar out of any Rocky movies, and I kind of think the slow build-up works better in the second one, because we've seen the heights and now we're back to the mundane, and we see he wants that back. He wants to be a fighter again, even if it costs him his sight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Rocky choosing to keep fighting despite his eye injury and even relearning how to box to compensate is really good character work.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that what makes the sort of mundaneness work better in this movie is the fact that in this one, the mundaneness comes from Rocky actually doing stuff. Whereas the first one was just kind of, this is who he is. This one's like, this is what he's trying to do, but he's failing at it. And I think that the drama was very, very compelling. And this movie starts introducing a lot more comedy in it as well. Like the chasing around the chicken scene, that was very funny, very humorous, but it also served the purpose of developing Rocky as a fighter and as a character, you know?
You know what's a consistent little bit of comedy they do in like all the Rocky movies that works? Just Rocky at press conferences, not really getting that it's a press conference and just talking about oh yeah, I like that they're doing it there because it's near my house. Afterwards, I'm gonna go home to my wife. Like, I can't tell if Rocky is genuinely dumb or just fucking with Creed in this movie. Little of both, probably.
Yeah, that goes to establish him as just kind of this regular, average guy in this extraordinary situation that he never thought he'd be in. So he's just kind of embracing that and being like, yeah, it's cool. Having a good time.
One thing about this movie, because Adrian, she's still in the shy personality. She doesn't become more forceful, and I like that personality more until Rocky 3. And it weirded me out, because we get all these scenes of Rocky being dumb with money, and Adrian's just, quietly oh, you shouldn't do that. And I can't tell if she's supposed to be passive-aggressive or just quiet.
Yeah, it's the challenge of how do you portray a character such as that, you know? It kind of reminds me of our conversation a couple weeks ago with Spider-Man. It's like Tobey Maguire, there was a few moments where he was really wooden, but it's like, okay, there's a difference between being awkward and being wooden, you know? So it's about finding that fine line. And I don't know if it always works. I like the fact that he starts building a family, he gets married, he has a son.
Yeah, it's really sweet. I really like the proposal at the zoo.
Yeah. And I love how he starts talking to the tiger, because, you know, that's just kind of the good-natured, wholehearted guy he is. The subplot of Adrian going into the coma, I felt like that could have been a bigger part of the movie.
It's very cheesy and cliche how it happens, but I will say Sylvester Stallone really brings the sadness of
Oh
Rocky
yeah.
as he's just talking to Adrian in that scene. Like, it could have been more, but I think it worked all right.
I did think it worked. It probably didn't help the fact that as soon as she wakes up, she's like, because the entire movie, she's like, no, you're not going to fight because you're going to go blind. And then she wakes up from the coma and is like, go kick his ass, Rocky. And I was like, that was a little out of place.
Speaking of the him who's gonna get his ass kicked, Apollo Creed is back! And now he has some more depth to his character with him wanting to prove himself that him beating Rocky wasn't a fluke.
Mm-hmm.
And the rematch, it's repetitive, that's kind of the same fight, but it's a good fight, and it's very evenly matched, and Rocky only barely wins. Like, you can understand why these two men respect each other so much and become friends from the third one onwards.
Creed was great, again, in this movie, and I really appreciated the idea that in the first movie, Creed is just kind of this full of himself dude, but then in the second one, he like legitimately has something to prove, and now he's pissed off. So now he's going to bring that rage into the match with Rocky. And again, that does go more to establish the fact that this guy is going so far out of his way just to fuck you up, to prove something, you know? I really like that.
It's dumb and kind of funny. Like, the first one, it was meant to be a one-off, so it ends with this great line, ain't never gonna be no rematch, don't want one anyway. And then the second one starts up 5 minutes after that, where Apollo's like, hey, changed my mind, want a rematch?
It made sense to me from Creed's character perspective, is he's just really this impulsive, emotional guy that he was like, no, I don't want this, and then he's like, oh, it has time to think about it, like, no. Fuck you. I'm angry now. Because, like, that anger goes from dismissiveness to rage.
Honestly, this film's great. It continues a lot of the good stuff from the first movie, and in some moments even improves upon it. Its biggest problem is, well, it's very similar to the first movie.
Like, tonally, stylistically, the story has a number of similarities, but overall, it tries going in a completely different direction, and I appreciated that. That said, there did come a point when watching all 5 of these movies, I'm like, I know exactly how this is gonna go. I did think the tension of Rocky winning in the final match was very well done. 2, 3, and 4 were actually directed by Sylvester Stallone, in addition to being written by him. So this is his vision, his unadulterated vision, if I'm using the word unadulterated correctly. I think there's a lot of compelling drama, mixed very well with a bit more comedy, and overall, I think this movie was very enjoyable. I think it's really on par with the first one, overall.
I'm not sure how I rank, like, in terms of quality, the first and the second.
I think personally I'm going to give this an 8. It's still great, but I don't know. It's great for different reasons. Whereas, like I said, like I keep bringing back, first one showed you who Rocky is. Second one gives you more of a story, what he's doing, what he's going through. And there's a lot of compelling drama, a lot of comedy. It's just, for me personally, I don't think it reaches the same height as the original did.
And we got done with that one 2 minutes early, which is good, because us doing Rocky went 2 minutes over. So, Rocky 3. I'm gonna be honest, surprised me. This was my favorite Rocky movie, watching them.
Really? Okay. What aspects of it made it your favorite?
And I'm not sure what made it that way. Overall, there's just a lot of good elements in this. Clubber Lang, just this intimidating, violent, my prediction, pain antagonist. Creed and Rocky becoming friends and training together. Adrian's big speech, which is my favorite scene of hers in the entire movie, on the beach, where she tells Rocky to fight for him, win or lose, because it will be real. It's just overall a really good movie.
Yeah, it is definitely a good movie. Personally, I don't feel the same way about it. I don't think it's a great movie because I feel like, whereas the second one mixed comedy and drama very well, I just feel like this is where they started going more heavy into the silliness of it. And like that scene with Thunderlips, played by Hulk Hogan, I feel like that really only served the purpose of just being comedy.
Although it was fun. It is fun seeing Rocky take on Hulk Hogan.
It is, yeah. And I love the fact that most of the Rocky villains are taller than him, which that in and of itself is inherently really interesting in a fight scene. I did really appreciate the fact that in this installment, he has been on top of the world for years now. He's the king, he's the reigning champ, and he's kind of become this real arrogant prick. You know, a woman kisses his cheek on stage, and his wife is like, oh, yeah, that was nice to see. Thank you, Rocky. The death of Mickey, his trainer, who I don't think we've actually brought up in this review, surprisingly.
No, Mickey's great in the other ones, just this bitter, grumpy old man who trains Rocky. Bit of a cliche character, but still great.
His death was really devastating in this movie, and especially Rocky's response to that. Like the emotion he gives watching his father figure die in front of him.
Yeah, I love that scene. Like, there are a couple moments in this movie that I think are really well shot. Like, Rocky gets knocked down by Lang, and it's just 10 count, and on the 10, it cuts to Mickey's dead body. And, like, as Rocky runs back to the locker room, like, he lies to Mickey saying, I beat him, I whooped him good, so Mickey can die happy. It's tragic. It's great.
Yeah, that was really compelling. This is my journey with Creed. Creed was also fantastic. He's fantastic in all the movies he's in. Here's my journey with him and Rocky becoming friends in this movie. At first, I thought it was a little out of place. The fact that in the previous one, they were bitter enemies, like predominantly on Creed's part, albeit, but they had a lot of bad emotions towards each other. And they cut to Creed, who's announcing the Rocky Clubber Lang fight, and he seems really cool with Rocky. And it's like, it wasn't established previously that they had become friends off screen previous to this movie.
Although, to be fair, I do feel like the ending of the second one, I'm pretty sure they, like, shake hands, like, as there's all that crowd going into the ring, but I feel like the second one is Creed gaining respect for Rocky.
Here's my take. I don't know, maybe I was misreading this situation, but I didn't get the fact that they were becoming friends off screen. More so for me personally, at a point I realized, I was like, that was kind of felt a little out of place, but then I realized, like, what Rocky has become, like, as champion, this arrogant prick, that's exactly what Creed was in the first two movies. It makes sense where it's more than just Creed training Rocky, which was incredible to see. Creed's like, no, I've been where you are more than just physically, emotionally, mentally. I can help you through this. Becoming a more humble person, recognizing the values you have in life. Because this is the journey that I've been on, admittedly because of you, but now I appreciate that you did that for me, so let me do that for you. Fantastic subtext.
Apollo Creed's just such a good character. Speaking of good characters, let's go to the bad ones. This movie is Actually, no. Rocky V's him at the worst. Paul continues to be bad after being kind of better in the second one. Like, this one opens with him just bitching about how Rocky's not nice to him. And also, he's really racist to Apollo's gym mates. That's great.
I don't know, it was kind of a funny moment for me when he was in the gym and he's like, I don't like hanging out with these people. And then Rocky goes, yeah, well, I don't think they like you much either. And he goes, what did I do to them? And it's just like, that's the racist mentality. It's like, you hate someone, well, they hate you. Why? I didn't do anything. Fucking exactly. Dude, shut up.
Something that is both a strength of this film and a big detriment of it is Mr. T's character, Clubber Lang. I did praise him a second ago, but I have mixed feelings on him. He's so over the top, arrogant, brutal, violent, that he works great as an antagonist. But he could have had a little bit more depth. I mean, there is a little there with, like, it opening of just showing Rocky being rich and famous, than him training in the basement, and just his whole deal is, I'm the best, I'm better than everyone, and I am angry and going to prove that.
I'm really torn on him. Like, on the surface, he's an imposing, intimidating antagonist, but he's not nearly as good of a character or as developed of a character as Creed is. So coming off of an incredible villain like Apollo Creed, going to this guy who's just, yeah, I'm gonna fight him because I'm the best. You know, that just felt really hollow, really surface level, flat for me. Also, wasn't the biggest fan of Mr. T's acting in this movie. I don't think he's a great actor.
He's going for a very specific style.
Yeah.
It's very cartoonish. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's not very grounded. Like the first movie, it's super grounded and realistic. And then this movie, and especially the fourth one, just become cartoonier and cartoonier.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I loved Creed training Rocky, although it didn't totally convince me all the time because it's like when Apollo's training Rocky, they're acting like Rocky's like kind of this shit boxer. Rocky keeps fucking up and they're like, come on, man, you gotta take this seriously. It's like, Rocky is a good fighter. I don't know, they just felt like they went a little too ham on the fact that he's out of his element in this. Like, they just kind of portrayed him as a bit more incompetent than what I would imagine Rocky Balboa to be. I think my favorite part of this movie was the fact that Rocky has PTSD from his fight with Clubber Lang and as a result losing Mickey. I really liked Adrian helping Rocky come to terms with losing Mickey. I loved when Creed gave Rocky his USA shorts, which throughout the franchise, it's like those shorts are almost sacred at this point. Like, he gives them to Rocky, like, these are my championship shorts. You have them to take back your title. And with all the character development that Creed had. And then even in that part in Creed where he gives them to Adonis, it feels sacred, which does come into play in not so great of a way later on, particularly in the fifth installment, and I will get back to that when we talk about that movie.
Honestly, now that I think about that, bringing up the fact that Donnie wears them in Creed, those shorts have got to fucking stink. Paulo wore them for years. Rocky wears them in his fights with Clubber Lang and even Drago. Tommy Gunn wears them for a while. These are 40-year-old shorts, Adonis. Don't wear them.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, they're only worn for like 45 minutes twice a year, realistically.
Yeah, but do you know how much sweat and blood goes into them during that 45 minutes?
True. But, I mean, I don't know. They could wash them. I don't know if that's bad luck. I've been told washing jerseys and stuff like that are bad luck. I don't know.
Overall, here's how I feel about this movie. It continues on the style and what makes the series great. It gives some great character development to Rocky, Apollo, and Adrian. I would say all three of them are at their peak in this movie with great performances. Eye of the Tiger is a great song, although it is a ripoff of Another One Bites the Dust. And above all, the reason why this one it felt the most enjoyable, it has better pacing. And maybe it's because I'm watching 5 in a row, but this one gets away from the slow pacing of the first two and just goes right into the development of these characters, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. I think they did a lot of great character work, and there were a lot of really great, compelling moments. At this point in the series, it is my least favorite, because I don't think they balanced the comedic and dramatic tones very well. I think Clubber Lang, though he was intimidating, I think was a pretty weak villain in comparison. Yeah, overall, I still think it's a solid movie.
Oh, and one last thing as we get into our final minute for this movie. I just love the ending where they have a friendly sparring fight.
Yeah.
And it cuts to black. Who won? Who knows? It was Apollo, according to Creed.
Ding, ding.
Yeah, that's great.
Also, a lot of the fight scenes didn't feel as real. Like, the fight scenes in 1 and especially 2 were great.
I feel like in 2 they did way too much slow-mo.
Yeah, but in this one, what gets me is the fact that you can see and tell that a lot of punches don't connect. Now, that's present in all movies, but you see it a lot in this one, too, so the fights don't feel as real. I did appreciate the fact that the final fight, if you noticed, it's not a montage. It's the only one of the first 4 that doesn't have at least one part where it's a montage. This is all real time.
I do really like that fight, even if it isn't the most grounded. And the timer just went off. Riley, how are you going to score this?
I think I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. Really great stuff. Has some flaws that make it not quite as good for me, but overall, I think it's a very compelling movie and a great installment into this franchise.
This is my hot take. This is my favorite Rocky movie. I'm giving it a 9. I don't know why I like it so. I mean, I gave some reasons. But yeah, I think this is the best Rocky movie, excluding the ones that we did in review today, because those are all also really good. Anyway, just in my favorite Rocky movie, let's do my least favorite, Rocky 4.
This movie is the definition of America! Fuck yeah!
We've never done a propaganda film before. And also, it's really weird to watch a propaganda film for a war that ended a few years before I was born.
In this film, obviously, Rocky's at the top of his game. He's considering retiring. The USSR joins professional boxing with this fucking tank of a human being known as Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren.
That's the greatest strength of Ivan Drago as a character, just the physicality of Dolph Lundgren being fucking huge.
Yeah. He is an intimidating villain. I liked Drago a lot more than I liked Clubber Lang. That said, they both don't have the greatest of characters. Drago doesn't really have much of a character, but I felt like, I don't know, when you're in the ring, I felt more intimidated by Drago and his impact in the entire story more than Clubber Lang.
Here's the thing about Ivan Drago. I liked how intimidating he is. He's the most intimidating in the series. And they do, at the end, give very briefly a little bit of strong characterization of him, like, shoving away his manager and saying, "I fight for me." Like, that's nice. It's good.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Ivan Drago is a character that exists to, like, fearmonger about those evil Ruskies. That's the big problem with this movie. It's a movie about, ooh, look at those evil Russians. We need to beat them because they're Russians and they're evil. Urgh.
Yeah. Personally, I feel watching it, maybe my experience was different than everyone else's, but I feel like they didn't go too heavy into the Cold War symbolism. Don't get me wrong, it was still there, and it was still a major part of this movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree. I felt it was too heavy to the point where I don't like this film that much.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen this movie before watching it for the show, and I talked with it about you. I don't know, it just didn't feel as on the nose as I thought it was going to be. Like, the final fight takes place in Russia, because Drago refuses to fight in America because they're receiving death threats for what he did. I don't know, I felt like that was a little sympathy thrown at, like, realistically, yeah, Americans hate Russians. Like, that's a little sympathy thrown
at the same time, I feel like, for instance, Drago's wife, who's, I feel like, is supposed to be unlikable. She's the main one who's like, you need to stop hating my husband because he's Russian. And, like, I feel like the audience is supposed to cheer against her and cheer for Apollo Creed, who is super, super nationalistic. Like, his motivation, well, he's trying to kill himself. But the motivation he says is he wants to beat up Ivan Drago for America. Because I ain't gonna have no athlete be from Russia. He's from LA. Why'd I do a Southern?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I thought for what this movie was just pure fun.
You know what's the most fun about this movie? When Apollo Creed dies.
Yes, that was fucking devastating. Honestly, like, I did think it was out of place that Creed was like, because you had so much development of him in the third installment, where he's like, no, I don't need that, I'm good. But then it cuts to him now, he's like, no, yeah, I'm ready. I want to fight. I want to kick his ass, because to prove myself. But we kind of already spent the entirety of the last movie establishing that you don't need that. So I thought that was a little out of place, but I did think that Creed dying and that shot of him convulsing on the floor, that was devastating.
It was devastating, and just this concept of Rocky not fighting for money or fame, but fighting to avenge his friend, training alone in Siberia for months. It's overall a very good structure for a movie. And the final battle is great. Just this slugmass of power punch after power punch. And yes, it's unrealistic, but them just beating the crap out of each other. And Drago, like, saying, he is like a piece of iron. It's overall a very good structure for a movie.
Yeah.
I just wish it wasn't wrapped up in the propaganda skin,
Yeah, for me personally, not to say that I condone it, it's just, for me personally, that wasn't too big of a flaw for me. It was a part of it, but it didn't affect me as much as it did you. I thought the fights were really great. There was a lot of lens flares, which got blinding at a point. One thing that occurred to me while watching this one as well, and it goes for all of them, there's a lot of very obvious ADR issues. Like a character will be talking, but then it'll cut to a wide shot of them, and their mouth is barely moving. But it's like they're talking, and it's like their mouth isn't making those words. Come on. That's just all present through all of these movies, which it did occur to me. I was like, what? This movie definitely is very outdated. There's a lot of montages. As I said, the first film was sort of free of the tropes and cliches of the sports genre. It's crazy to see how this franchise evolved over time because it became full on, like, all these cliches in abundance, added to the fact that there's a fucking talking robot for some reason. That Paul...
Yeah, what the fuck is the robot? What the fuck was that?
I don't even know. I don't even know.
What the fuck? That's so weird and stupid. Polly gets a robot girlfriend. Sure, that's what we need in our sports movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, while we're talking about montages, it's a terrible scene. Like this 5-minute scene of Rocky just driving and it flashbacks to the other films, including things that happened 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, that was a little bad.
At least the training montage is good.
Yeah, the training montages were great, especially along the song Hearts on Fire. I think that's what that's called. That was a fucking banger. Oh, I did think it was really funny how there was one training montage, and then Adrian shows up in Siberia saying she's going to support Rocky, and then it immediately jumps into another training montage, and Rocky climbs a fucking mountain. That was badass. This movie is over the top and outdated, but goddamn, I thought it was fun.
There are actually two small scenes that made me really like side characters. Like, there's a scene where Rocky talks to Duke Evers, who I know we haven't talked about yet, because he's not really that major of a character. He is Apollo's trainer, where he's like, Apollo was like a son to me. Like, that was a really good scene. And also, Paulie, says that he loves Rocky and thanks him for always standing by for him. That's nice. And then we find out at the start of the next movie that as that was going on, Paulie was fucking over the family. But still.
Yeah. Was it screwing over, or more so just his drunken incompetence fucking them over?
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't, because fuck Paulie. But one thing that struck me was Drago has 9 lines in this movie. 9.
I do it for me. He's like a piece of iron. If he dies, he dies. Hold on. Something I realized while rewatching this movie for the show. Does Drago speak English? Because he only has 2 English lines and they're both very simple sentences.
I don't know. I think of his 9 lines, only 2 or 3 are in Russian. Here are the lines right here. You will lose. I cannot be defeated. I defeat all men. Soon I defeat the real champion. If he dies, he dies. I must break you. He's not a human. He's like a piece of iron. I fight to win for me. For me. And until the end.
He manages to get across a lot of menace with only 9 lines.
Right. This is a bit off topic from the movie, or from the quality of this movie, but I did some behind the scenes digging, and I would just like to say, Dolph Lundgren is a fucking badass. As a human being. This man, built like a fucking tank, has an IQ of 160.
Oh, wow.
And a master's degree in chemical engineering. He has been open in interviews about how much he fucked while filming this movie. He would have orgies every single night, with sometimes him and upwards of 5 women at one time. Behind the scenes fun fact about this movie, Dolph Lundgren had so many threesomes, foursomes, fivesomes, sixsomes by night that he actually, at a point while filming, he had to prevent himself from doing that, going out and having sex and partying, because the physical toll of doing so by night and then putting fucking Sylvester Stallone in the hospital by day during these action scenes, the physical toll of doing all that was too straining on him. On him, the fucking 6.5 foot tall guy with 0% body fat. Fuck. He had so much orgies that he had to stop himself from having orgies while filming this movie.
God damn.
Yeah. And he's fucking genius level intelligence, obviously. And this movie obviously skyrocketed his career.
We ran out of things to talk about in this one early because there isn't a lot that happens in this one. It's the shortest Rocky movie. It contains a lot of filler and a lot of weird stuff with the robot.
Yeah, I did think it was overall a really fun movie, but it's not nearly as good as the other films. So for that reason, I personally am going to give this a 7. I still think it's a really fun movie, though it does have a lot of flaws.
I'm gonna go a 5. I don't like movies where the villain is just people the US is at war with. Especially because, like, he's an athlete. It's like, be afraid of the spooky, evil athletes, I guess?
Yeah.
They're gonna murder your friends. But yeah, the Rocky series, you'll notice from Riley's scores, it does kind of drip a bit, according to a lot of people. I have different thoughts, but on to Rocky 5, which is kind of going to continue the downward spiral.
Yeah. It does for me. This is my least favorite of the 5. It is interesting because while Sylvester Stallone wrote all of them and he directed 2, 3, and 4, he did not return to direct this film. They brought John G. Avildsen, who won an Oscar for directing the first one. They brought him back to make 5 in an attempt to bring Rocky back to his roots. Instead of this silly, wacky propaganda film, they bring him back to Philadelphia and try going back to this humble roots that the franchise started at. The problem is, for me, I don't think they executed this film has some great ideas, but I don't think any of them are very well executed.
No, I agree completely. I think this film has so many potential ideas, like Rocky dealing with retirement, Rocky's relationship with his son, Rocky training a new champion, and learning about the seedy underside of professional boxing. It has good things in it.
What I really liked about the entire series is they all do feel like, to varying degrees, natural continuations of the previous. Like in the first one, it's just shows who he is. And the second one is him trying to move on, but realize just showing us what boxing and what fighting means to him as a person. The third installment is him being this, now that he's on top, what does that do to him as a person and how he loses that and how he's completely lost but has to regain his confidence as well as his title. The fourth one is him avenging the death of the guy that helped him with that, helped him as a human being. This one really feels like a natural continuation. Like the story that this goes, Paulie signed away all of Rocky's money to an attorney who embezzled it to finance some housing market thing, and then he lost it all.
Which is such a cheap ass-pull way to make Rocky poor again. It should have been Rocky like he wants to go back to his roots and raise his son right, so he returns to the neighborhood and takes over Mickey's gym. Nah, he's poor again because Paulie's a fucking asshole.
Right, yeah. He's retiring from fighting. He has no money. He lost his title. But then he starts training the next champion, you know, and all of that, it's all great on paper. It's just in execution, Rocky's a dick in this movie. Like, it all boils down, for me, it all boiled down to that scene where Tommy, the guy he trains, it all boiled down to him when Tommy drives away saying, I'm gonna team up with the corrupt fight promoter. That moment should have been one of the most devastating moments in the entire series. But it just wasn't, because none of the ideas were executed properly. Like, at that moment, that should have been Rocky at his lowest. He has already lost his father figure and his friend. Now he has lost all of his money, lost his fame. He lost his chance at sort of redeeming himself by training the next guy. And he's losing his family. And he has brain damage in this movie, which was later retconned in Rocky Balboa as a misdiagnosis.
Oops.
He lost everything by that point, but it doesn't have the same impact because he's just a dick who unnaturally goes all in on this guy who he doesn't fully know or trust, and we don't believe the relationship, and he's just a dick to his wife and kid.
Yeah, like, he's so obviously bad to Robert, and I mean, there is some reconciliation that I feel like could have been handled a bit better. Again, Rocky 6 fixes the problems. But Tommy Gunn had potential to be one of the best characters in the series, and he ends up being the weakest. You know what my problem with him is? like, after he signs up with George Washington Duke, who, side note, interrupting myself, two things on George Washington Duke. Number one, you already have a character in this movie named Duke. Number two, I love how fucking smarmy he is. George Washington Duke's a great film. But Tommy Gunn, like, as soon as he signs up with Duke, he just becomes a fucking irredeemable asshole. And, like, there's never any redemption or reconciliation. There was, like, a deleted scene where, at the end, he makes up with Rocky, but no, he just becomes an asshole and then is never heard from again. And I feel like that's a mistake.
Right. This whole movie had so much going for it, but it wastes all of its time meandering on this relationship between Rocky and Tommy. But you just don't believe it because it's not written well. And not to speak ill of the dead, actor Tommy Morrison, who played Tommy Gunn, has since passed away due to complications from the AIDS virus.
Oh, shit.
Tommy Morrison, he was a real boxer.
And honestly, for someone who's not an actor, he does a pretty believable job.
It's believable.
He's no Carl Weathers, but he's better than I would expect most boxers, is what I'll say.
Yes, absolutely. That's my opinion on it. He's not terrible. He's better than most professional athletes turned actors. Then again, that's along the lines of fucking Dennis Rodman and Michael Jordan in Space Jam.
Hey, are you telling me that Shaquille O'Neal is not the greatest actor living today?
Put it this way, there's a reason he's teamed up with Adam Sandler. He did the best job he could, and he wasn't terrible. That said, he's no Kevin Garnett in Uncut Gems. He only has 2 acting credits. This, and from what I can tell, a small role in John Carpenter's They Live. Point is, as a guy who was not an actor, he does give a better performance than what I would have imagined someone like that would. That said, his line delivery is not very good, I don't think. He's saying the lines, but I don't feel much emotion behind him because he's like trying to get them all out. Like, hey man, Rocky, you're nothing, man. I'm better than you. And it's like he's just trying to blurt out the lines as quickly as possible. Whenever he brings emotion, he brings it. Is it the right emotion for the scene? I don't always think so. I don't know. He was better. That said, he was not a well-written character. The relationship with Rocky wasn't believable, and the acting wasn't up to par with what I think it should have been.
What's your opinion on Rocky's son, Robert? Like, he's a child actor, so he isn't great, but he has an arc in this movie, unlike past ones, and it's not the worst arc. It hinges on Rocky being a terrible father, is the problem.
Yeah.
Robert's a decent character, but his arc hinges on Rocky being a dick to him.
Yeah. I thought the kid did as good of a job as he could. And what they should have done, instead of just Rocky being a bad father, what they should have done is lean more heavily into the fact where Robert he's like, no, I need to learn how to fight. I need to protect myself like you. And Rocky's like, no, you're going to use your brain. You're a great painter. You're a great student. That's what you're going to do. You don't be like me. I'm not a good guy. Don't be like me. Be better than me. I think that's what they should have leaned more heavily into, but it wasn't that. And despite that being what should have been the focus, Robert trains, kicks the bully's ass, and then establishes, oh yeah, the way to deal with this is by fighting, doing what his father doesn't want him to do. You know, it's an arc, but it's not the best handled arc in any way.
Yeah, and I feel like him reconnecting with his father should have been like the climax, and maybe it should have been tied into the fight with Tom. Oh shit, I just realized instead of Rocky defending Paulie, it should have been maybe Rocky defending his son from Tommy Gunn, and then they reconnect. That would have been good. But no, like, it's weird that which is arguably the main emotional thoroughfare throughout the film, it just kind of ends before the climax, and then we get the fight in the street. Oh, speaking of how this movie ends, so Rocky's still, like, poor at the end.
Yeah.
Like, what changes in this movie?
Nothing.
He makes his son hate him, but then he makes his son like him again. He starts training Tommy, but then he stops training Tommy. He's still broke. Like, the fuck happened?
The brain damage and money subplots are completely dropped. The only scene, after the scene with the doctors, and maybe Adrian bringing it up every once in a while, the only scenes that it's ever brought up is like when Tommy's driving away, he just kind of gets a headache, and that's it.
Well, to be fair, like, when he's getting beat up by Tommy, there are, like, flashbacks to his fight with Drago, and the implication is that Tommy is worsening his injury.
Yeah.
And that gets us to an interesting bit of trivia about this movie. The original written ending was that Tommy kills Rocky.
Oh, shit.
Which I feel like is such a disappointing downer ending.
Right.
This film's ending is already kind of like not that great, but I don't want that to be the ending to Rocky Balboa.
No, not at all.
Have Rocky Balboa be the ending to Rocky Balboa, or Creed 2, or really any Rocky film except this, or the version of this where Rocky dies.
Right, exactly. Rocky dying is not the way to end this franchise. And he's not going to be in Creed 3 because they're going to focus more on Adonis and his story and his family, which, interestingly enough, I actually just found out a couple days ago. Do you know who's directing Creed 3?
Yeah, I saw that as I was browsing through the movies in prep for this. Michael B. Jordan's directing it. Good for him.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm cautiously interested. Not because I don't think he can do it.
I'm sure it will be every bit as good as the Rocky movies directed by Stallone. Well, those had a big variance in quality.
I'm not trepidatious about him directing because I don't think he can do it. I just think he's never directed before. It's something new for him, and it's a new challenge, and I'm down for it. I am down for it, and I'm hopeful. I'm in his corner. I'm rooting for him. But getting back to Rocky 5, I liked the idea that this movie doesn't end with a boxing match. It ends with a street fight. I like that conceptually. But in addition to being very poorly edited and very poorly shot, all the drama didn't really properly build up to this fight, you know? They had all the dramatic elements there, but they just squandered it. And because of that, the ending didn't really have much of an impact. Added to the fact that the entire time, George Washington Duke is like, no! Yeah!
At least Rocky punches him in the face.
Yeah, and then he's probably gonna get sued.
I will say, because I'll go like 20 seconds more, who gives a shit? I feel like the film's biggest problem, and it's a problem that isn't really a problem anymore. For a long time, this was the ending to the series, and it's not a high note to end on. Any other Rocky movie is a good place to end the series, except this. This is just pathetic. It ends with Rocky being left pathetic.
Yeah, it's very uninspirational ending, and they tried to return to form.
And being inspirational is important. It's Rocky.
Yeah.
So what you gonna give it?
I think I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 10. Just very uninspired. It squandered a lot of great premises. It just squandered them. You don't believe the relationship with Tommy. Rocky's a dick. It betrays the character. I felt like Rocky was too emotional in this movie. Like, he's so excited and happy to be hanging out with Tommy. A, you don't believe it. B, that's just not in Rocky's character. And that is the challenge of how do you portray a character as awkward and calm as Rocky as being excited. Also, he gave Tommy Gunn Creed's shorts. That is blasphemy.
Yeah, like...
Blasphemy, my friend. Blasphemy.
Blasphemy. Not yours to give away, man.
Nope. Especially not to this prick.
And also, like, how did he get them back for Apollo? Did he, like, go to Tommy's house? And, like, hey, I need the pants back. Whatever. 7.5 out of 10. Like, I mean, despite its faults, there were good things here. Rocky's a bit of a dick. Adrian's barely in it. Apollo's dead. But, you know, it's a good concept. It could have worked if the script was tightened up and better.
For me, I do think each one does dip in quality as it goes on, but I think 2 is almost on par with 1. 4, I think, though it's not as good, I think it's a lot of fun, personally. This is the only one that I don't think is good. I don't think this one has very many redeeming qualities to it.
I mean, personally, I think the second one's a slight improvement over the first, and then the third a slight improvement over it. And then the fourth, I would say, I mean, it's not as good as the first 3, but it would be good if it wasn't propaganda. And then the fifth one's just kind of meh.
Just wait until Rocky Balboa when Adrian died of cancer earlier.
I just did some quick typing numbers into Google and then hitting enter because Google works as a calendar. Do you know what the series overall gets as a score, assuming I didn't misclick anything?
What's that?
7.35.
Okay.
Yeah, it went 8.5, 8.25, 8.256, 5.75. Ooh boy, that is a slope.
Yeah, 7.35, you said? Yeah, I do think overall, as a series, I think that's about right for me.
Quick, review the 3 that we didn't review so it gets like a whole 2 points higher.
Haven't seen Rocky Balboa. Creed is fantastic. Haven't seen Creed 2. That's my review.
Haven't seen Rocky Balboa, but I've heard it's the best one. Creed is fantastic. Creed 2 is, like, it's good, but all of its plot elements are recycled. They're good plot elements, it's just, it recycles stuff from 2, 3, and 4, which is weird. But it's good. It's good. I recommend it. But yeah, we reviewed all of the Rocky movies. Did that work out? I don't know. I'll have to re-listen to this. Next week, we're going to be returning to a series that we've gone to twice before. And I have a feeling, much like the Rocky series, we're going to think that, ooh, the quality started to decline over time with this one. Because we're reviewing Batman Forever.
Mm-hmm.
No more Michael Keaton. Yes, Jim Carrey.
Yeah, love that guy.
Anyway, we'll be doing that, assuming we don't go blind, then forget about it, then get brain damaged, then have it retconned away, and then be dying of cancer but get treated. The point is, we're going to be back eventually and do that. As always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe, and you can find the show on...
Fuck, why do I always forget that?
I don't know, man, but it's okay.
No, I used to be good about it, but like the last 2 weeks, I've just kept doing that. Where can they find the show, Riley?
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Silver Age Silver Screen, where you can check out all the content we post on there. You can find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe, where you can check out all of my short films. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Riley James Thorpe. Casey, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at JarmsCasey, JarmesCasey. You can find all my work at caseyjarms.wordpress.com. Really gotta update that website. I have a few pieces of work now on it. Oh, speaking of my work, and also speaking of hyper-nationalist propaganda like Rocky IV, I'm making a series of video essays, a 3-part essay series about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's overall a sequel to the My Hero Academia one I made back in March. The first part, which is subtitled The Life and Times of Steve Rogers, should be out now. The second part, The Power of Propaganda, I'm aiming for July 4th, and the third part a week after that. So check that out. It's good. I think it's good. I haven't recorded it yet. I have the script. The script is really long because I don't know when to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of not knowing when to shut the fuck up, let's end the show.
Yeah, so I'm Riley Thorpe.
I'm Casey Jarms. And hey, it's just a series of movies. Don't lose your head about it. Especially not to a ladder.